So today I'm doing my June mid-month wrap-up. That is to say, I'm going to talk about all the books that I read during the first half of June. So stick around. Hey friends, Roger here, and welcome to my channel, Rogers Reads. So today I'm doing my monthly wrap-up, part 1 of the books that I've read in June. And I'll probably do part 2 in the beginning of July or something around there. So the first book that I read in June was entitled A Dog's Purpose by W. Bruce Cameron. So this is kind of an older book, and I'm guessing that most people know what it's about, especially since it's been recently made into a movie, which I haven't seen. This was actually last month's pick for my in-person book club. So A Dog's Purpose is a story of a dog's search for purpose as he is reincarnated over and over again. So I read a review of this a while back when somebody referred to this as a weapons grade tearjerker, and they hit it right on the head. But this is also a beautiful, heartfelt story about a dog who finds happiness among his many tail-wagging adventures. So I really love the voice of the dog, and I thought that the author did an excellent job of bringing the dog's narrative voice to life. So at first I really wasn't too keen on reading a book that was told from the point of view of an animal. But this story took me totally by surprise in a good way. So all in all, it really is a lovely story, and I'm glad I ended up reading it. I've already picked up the sequel, A Dog's Journey, which I actually picked up from the library sale quite a while ago. I didn't realize it was part 2 in the series. So the next book that I read in June was entitled The Upside of Unrequited by Becky, Abertalli. And many of the books that I'm talking about today, I talked about in my Read Your Gaze vlog, because I read a whole bunch of these books for the Read Your Gaze readathon. So The Upside of Unrequited follows two sisters, twin sisters actually, one named Molly, who's a plus-size gal and who has never so much as even kissed anyone, and the other named Cassie, who's a lesbian. So Cassie has snagged herself a girlfriend, so Molly's feeling a tad left out at the moment. Now Molly's girlfriend, Mia, I think it was, I can't remember her name, I think it was Mia, has a friend named Will, who's kind of a cool hipster guy, and Molly's starting to wonder whether she could win this Will over. But then at the same time, Molly begins to realize her growing attraction to her co-worker Reed. So I quite enjoyed this story, and I also loved all the representation in the book. So the main character is plus-sized, her sister is a lesbian, as are their two moms, and there was a pansexual character as well. So The Upside of Unrequited is basically a fluffy romance of the should I choose him or him variety. So there's really not a whole hell of a lot of depth to it. Still, it was sweet and endearing with plenty of diversity and likable characters. So the next book they read was entitled How Not to Ask a Boy to Prom by S.J. Goslee, I believe. Goslee. So the story follows Nolan Grant, a 16-year-old gay kid who's also never kissed anyone, much less dated. So his sister Daphne is determined to get him a date, so she stages this elaborate promposal complete with glittery banners so that Nolan can ask out his crush, an openly gay popular jock named Sayomara, I think it was, Sayomara. But when Nolan opens the door to pop the big question, he sees that the brooding bad boy, Ira Bernstein, aka Bern, is also in the room. And needless to say, Nolan is horrified. So when Bern sees Nolan's sign, Bern pretends that the sign was for him and agrees to go to the prom with Nolan. So the two of them end up fake dating, with Bern having his own reasons for doing so. Though nervous, Nolan goes along with it, except he didn't take into consideration one thing: Bern's lethal ex-girlfriend. So I always enjoyed the fake dating trope. It's one of my favorite tropes, and this one did not disappoint. It had all of my favorite fake dating elements. There was meeting the parents, awkwardly incorporating the new boyfriend into your circle of friends, clumsy public displays of affection, numerous misunderstandings and miscommunication, and of course, the growing affection that ends up developing between the two of them. So I thought this book was a lot of zany fun, and I appreciated that it was fairly low angst as well. And though it was a playful, light-hearted novel, it was also deeply moving. And I ended up giving this book 4 stars. So the next book I read was entitled We Contain Multitudes by Sarah Henstra. So this story follows 2 high school students, Jonathan and Adam, who are paired up in a pen pal assignment in which they have to write each other weekly letters. Now the 2 of them couldn't be more different, with Jonathan being a poultry-loving, somewhat flamboyant, eccentric gay kid who dresses up every day as Walt Whitman, and who's being bullied by a group of kids at school. And Adam, who's the serious, scrappy, misunderstood football star with family difficulties. So initially, the letters between the 2 of them focus more on their differences and the completely 2 different worlds of which they're a part. But then, through these weekly letters, we learn more and more about the 2 boys as their lives and secrets begin to unfold through their correspondence. And it's through these letters that we learn about the emotionally complex struggles that each of them is going through in their daily lives, as well as the physical danger that each of them is facing. So what I liked is how it all unfolded so slowly and naturally from one letter to the next, and how what began as a simple English assignment turned out to be something much more significant. But then things get quite dark, especially during the last part of the book, and some of the portions were actually quite difficult to read. It definitely broke my heart in a couple of places. And there's also a couple of scenes that are really disturbing, including homophobia, bullying, physical violence, and hateful language. So you'll want to keep this in mind if you're more of a sensitive reader. So that being said, I still really adore this idea of our 2 characters getting to know each other and then falling in love through their letters. You know, it kind of made me think of Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, in which the 2 characters fell in love via email, though this story was much more intense and heavy-hitting than Simon. So all in all, I thought that this book was beautifully written and profound, with well-drawn characters and an utterly moving plotline. You know, the story felt so real as that it seemed as though I were reading actual correspondence between 2 people. And though the story is sad and heartbreaking, it's also restorative and hopeful. And you know, when a book repeatedly moves me to tears, it's pretty much an automatic 5-star read for me. And that was the case with this hauntingly beautiful story. So the next book that I read in June was entitled I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver. So this story follows our main character, Ben, who comes out to their parents as non-binary. So their coming out did not go quite as planned, and their parents ended up throwing them out of the house in the middle of winter in 30-degree Fahrenheit weather. So Ben calls their sister, whom Ben hasn't seen in like 10 years, I think, and she and her husband, who Ben has never even met, agreed to take Ben in. So it's interesting to note that Ben's relationship with their sister is quite strained, which adds kind of to the intrigue of the story. So with the help of their sister and brother-in-law, Ben gets enrolled in school, they make new friends, and they even meet a boy named Nathan, who seems to take a particular interest in Ben. But and in spite of Ben's best efforts to keep Nathan at arm's distance, Ben and Nathan end up forming a relationship. So I think that this is a really important book in that someone who is non-binary or questioning would be able to recognize themselves in a story. And yeah, because I mentioned this in my reading vlog, how when I was a kid, there were no books about gay characters, at least none that I was aware of at the time. So yeah, I would have been delighted to see myself represented in literature. I also thought that this was quite an educational book because you get to see the world through the eyes of someone who is non-binary. And we witness all the feelings and challenges that go along with that, as well as we see how hurtful misgendering can be. Now, though this was an excellent story with a well-done and intriguing plotline, you know, I hate to say it, but I just didn't love it as much as I had hoped. Probably because I had a difficult time connecting with Ben's character. They came across as being excessively mopey and whiny throughout the entire book. Now, I do realize that they are depressed and suffer from anxiety disorder, compounded by their parents' rejection, but it goes on page after page and month after month, which I thought might have been a little bit over the top, a little bit unrealistic. It also bothered me how ungrateful Ben was toward their sister, especially given that their sister essentially rescued them after they were thrown out of the house in the middle of winter, took them in, got them enrolled in school, bought them clothes, bought them a computer, and gave them support. So in this way, I felt that the animosity Ben felt for their sister throughout the story was, I don't know, over the top and unrealistic, especially their monosyllabic responses and unwillingness to engage in conversation. You know, it was kind of difficult to believe that Ben was 18 as they came across more like they were 13 or 14. Now, I do seem to be in the minority here. From what I've read online, most people who've read this book absolutely love it. So even though I didn't connect with it as much as I hoped, I still think this is a moving book and definitely well worth reading. And I ended up giving this book 3 stars. So the next book I read in June was entitled When the Moon Was Ours. And I actually have this book. All the other books that I've read were actually library books, so I had to bring them back. So When the Moon Was Ours by McLemore. So this is a magical realism story that follows an Italian-Pakistani trans boy named Sam, who, because of family obligations, had to dress as a boy throughout their childhood, but only until he reaches puberty. Now the thing of it is that Sam has no intention whatsoever of resuming life as a girl, and as far as he is concerned, he is a boy. Now it also helps that he and his mother left their home when Sam was just an infant, so everybody in their town assumes that Sam is indeed a boy. So Sam ends up befriending a strange Latina girl named Miel, who emerged from the water tower one day claiming that she lost the moon. And the Miel actually grows roses from her wrists. She also has a very mysterious and compelling family dynamic which unfolds as we move through the story. Now in town there are also 4 beautiful red-haired girls known as the Bonner sisters who are believed to be witches, given that they can make anybody fall in love with them. And they've broken many a heart on occasion. So Miel's roses have now caught their attention and they've resorted to blackmail to force Miel to turn over her roses to them. So I really enjoyed Sam and Miel together. It's like their uniqueness and secrets brought them together, and I enjoyed how their friendship evolved throughout the story, and it was touching to see the amount of respect each had for the other. They were such wonderfully rich and complex characters, and their mysteriousness and deep love for each other brought the story even more to life, which is important for a character-driven story like this one. Now, I hate to admit that it took me a while to get into the story, as the writing is quite lyrical and heavy on the symbolism and the metaphors. So much so that at times I had a difficult time discerning if an event was actually occurring or whether it was merely metaphorical. So because of this, I really didn't connect with the writing as much as I had hoped, and I kind of found myself slogging through it from time to time. So though the writing was beautiful and ethereal, and the diverse characters compelling, this book just didn't strike a deep chord with me. I didn't dislike it, but it just didn't wow me as much as I hoped it would. It's still worth a read, as it has a compelling storyline and rich, diverse characters, and is a beloved book by many people. And I ended up giving this book 3 stars. So the next book that I read, or I should say listened to this month, was entitled Radio Silence by Oseman, and I consumed this via audiobook. So this one follows Frances, an academically obsessed girl who is intent on going to Cambridge when she graduates and will let nothing stand in her way. So her life changes one day when she meets Oleg, who, as it turns out, is the creator of her favorite YouTube podcast entitled Universe City. So what develops then is a beautiful platonic relationship between the two of them, especially once Francis agrees to create the art for the show. So what's strange is that Oleg does not want anyone to learn that he is the creator, and he's super secretive as to his reasons why. We do find out later on in the book, but it definitely added to the intrigue of the story. So in meeting Oleg, Frances, for the first time, feels that she can finally be herself. And she soon finds herself struggling to determine who she is versus who she wants to be. So though this is a story about a boy and his podcast, it's also about so much more than that. And as Frances and the other characters in the story learn, when choosing what we want to do with our lives, there isn't necessarily only one correct option. So what we see here is a lovely set of characters who learn at the end of the day to love themselves and to be true to themselves, which sometimes takes a hell of a lot of courage. No, this is the second novel I've read recently about the insane pressure put on kids to be academically superior and to succeed no matter what. So in addressing this topic, the book shines a spotlight on the importance of living our lives for ourselves and not for our parents' expectations or the expectations placed upon us by society or by other authority figures. Now, I do need to mention that this is a hard-hitting story, a difficult, emotionally intense journey of personal growth that's kind of tough to read in some places, but it's also poignant, hopeful, and deeply engaging. You know, another plus for me in this novel was that it's focused on friendship and family rather than romance, and specifically revolved around a male-female platonic friendship, which I found totally refreshing. So all in all, I thought that this was a gem of a book with a lovely ending. And they ended up giving this book 4 stars, I do believe. So the next book that I read in June was entitled The Summer Cottage by Viola Shipman. Hopefully that's focusing. So this was an advanced reader copy, and the reason that I requested it is that it takes place in Saugatuck, Michigan, a place that I used to vacation at quite frequently. So it kind of had a nostalgic element to it for me. And what's interesting about this book is that Viola Shipman, the author, is actually written by Wade Roos, who is using his grandmother's name as his pen name, which I thought was really interesting. And I think I recall reading that the reason he did this was so that his grandmother's name, his grandmother, wouldn't be forgotten. So I thought that tidbit was really cool. So anyway, the story follows Addie Lou, a middle-aged woman who leaves her cheating husband and life behind and decides to reinvent herself by restoring an old cottage on Lake Michigan that she inherited from her parents. So while growing up, she always referred to the cottage as the Creaky Cottage, and it's easy to see that the cottage holds plenty of precious memories for her. So even though she's pressured by her ex-husband and her attorney to sell the cottage, she instead decides to take one hell of a gamble and, spending money she doesn't really have, decides to fix it up and transform the creaky old cottage into a bed and breakfast. So of course, our brave protagonist has to face all manner of obstacles, everything from a cantankerous preservation society to overly demanding guests and, unsurprisingly, unexpected expenses. She honestly had no idea of the work and cost involved in such an undertaking, and I loved journeying with her as she tried to pull off the impossible, and in so doing discovers support in unexpected places. Now, what was fun about this book is that each section is themed after one of the delightfully simple 14 rules that her parents had for the cottage, with the first one being, leave your troubles at the door. Addie Lou also names every room in the bed and breakfast after one of the rules as well. And I thought that this clever plot device worked magnificently in this story. And it made me think that we all could use some of these rules in our lives, in our own life from time to time. But I'm not going to tell you any more of the rules, lest I ruin the fun of discovering them for yourself. But I really love seeing how, as the cottage was brought back to life, so too was Addie Lou, as she discovered parts of herself that she'd forgotten or never even knew were there. So in this way, what we have here is a book about healing, about reinventing oneself, about discovery, and hope for someone who's not quite sure of their direction or path. So all in all, I love this book. It's an uplifting, poignant, and heartfelt novel that is as empowering as it is beautiful. And a couple of surprising twists render this a truly memorable read. It's also quite an atmospheric book, and I felt that the author did an excellent job with the setting, which added an extra charming element to the story. You know, I really love the running away and rebuilding your life trope, and this one did not disappoint. I also enjoy stories where the focus is on the restorative power of a small town community, so this novel really hit all the right chords with me. So all in all, a lovely story about turning lemons into lemonade, and I ended up giving this one 5 stars. So the last book that I'm going to talk about today is entitled With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo, and I actually posted a full-on book review of this on the channel. So I love books about cooking, baking, restaurants, and food, so I was thrilled to learn that one of my favorite authors, Elizabeth Acevedo, was coming out with a book centered around a young woman who loves to cook and is really good at it. So this follows Imoni, a 17-year-old teen mom who's been living with her grandmother and raising her daughter, who's now 2 years old. And all through high school, her and her grandmother are desperately trying to make ends meet. Now Imoni, she has dreams of becoming a chef one day, given that she has a magic touch when it comes to cooking. She always seems to know the right combination of ingredients to make her meals truly a magical experience, so much so that people are moved to tears while eating her creations. So I really love that little touch of magical realism here, and I thought that it added a super sweet touch to the story. So then the opportunity to take a culinary arts class, which includes actually a trip to Spain, an immersion cooking trip, comes up. And even though Imoni has neither the time nor the money to make this happen, she decides, what the hell, she's gonna go for it, knowing that this could open doors for her to pursue that which she loves. So all in all, I love this empowering story. Imoni was a wonderfully driven, passionate, and determined character, and I loved seeing her growth throughout the book as she chased down her dreams. The novel was a beautifully written, thought-provoking, multi-layered story with a nicely wrapped-up ending, and for me, was another hit by Elizabeth Acevedo, and I ended up giving this book 4 stars. So that is it for part 1 of my June wrap-up. Part 2 should show up in the beginning of July, hopefully. So how about you? Have you read anything good lately? Let me know in the comments. So that about does it. As always, I thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all of your support. And if you like this video, I'd really appreciate you clicking the like button below, as that really helps my channel out. And that about does it for this time. I will talk to you in the next video. Roger and out.